As Jesus awakes on Tuesday morning, he wakes up in Bethany and he heads towards Jerusalem. Now he's headed to the temple on this Tuesday morning, but on both this morning and tomorrow, Wednesday morning, Jesus will interact with a certain fig tree on his way there. Matthew puts both of these interactions together in Matthew chapter 21, verses 18 through 22. But Mark, in his gospel, helps us understand that this happens Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning. Now, this is important. On this day, Jesus is going to go and cleanse the temple. We're familiar with this story where Jesus comes and he overturns the tables and he's very upset about what's happening in this place of worship. But he also curses this fig tree. And when you look at the two of those, what's happening is as Jesus cleanses the temple, it's a public condemnation on the worship that's taking place there. And as Jesus curses this fig tree, it's a public condemnation on the nation of Israel. Now, you got to understand a little bit about how this works. It's early for figs. We're still about a month early from when the trees are really producing figs in that region. But this particular fig tree has leaves on it. Fig trees produce fruit before they produce leaves. So if you see the tree from a distance and there's leaves on it, it's safe to assume that there's going to be fruit on that tree. This tree has leaves, but no fruit. It was a fruitless tree. And Jesus sees that as a great illustration. Jesus ends up pronouncing death on the tree, and it dies instantly. But the apostles won't see that until the next morning as they travel past the tree again and recognize that it died just as Jesus said that it would. Now, this fig tree represents Israel. The leaves on the fig tree represent Israel's religious activity. They're all about their temple worship, their keeping of the law, the things that they have to do. But there's no fruit. The no fruit is now back to Israel. You have your religious activity, but there's no fruit in what you're doing. You have your practices, but no fruit coming forth. So the next day, as the fig tree is dried up and dead, it gives us the picture that Israel didn't obey. And they are dealing with the curse that comes from not obeying God. Now, Jesus isn't happy about this tree that has leaves and no fruit. Or he's not happy about Israel and their superficial religious activity with no fruit coming from it. And so on this day, he goes into the temple and causes quite the scene. Now, the temple is very important. People are doing things in the temple every single day throughout this week. Remember, there are tons of people in Jerusalem for Passover. And all of them are coming to the temple because they're coming to pray, they're coming to give their offerings, they're coming to make sacrifices to God, they're coming to see it. There's tourists there to get to experience what it all looks like. And Jesus is angered by the way the temple is being run. You see, Jesus isn't here to fix the relationship of the Jewish people to the Romans. He cares about people's relationship with God. And here in the temple, he is very unhappy with the worship that is supposed to be offered up to God. Let me give you some quick background. Herod the Great has appointed some high priests that weren't legitimate. They shouldn't have been there and the ones running as high priests. But Herod the Great doesn't care about God's word and the standard that God has put in place. And so as he has put these high priests in their positions, they have a lot of authority. This is people like Annas and Annas' son Caiaphas. We'll deal with them later as Jesus is arrested and has to stand before them in trials. But this misuse of the temple has come through their leading and their corrupt business that they've put in place to try to make money and profit off of the whole thing. In fact, as Jesus turns the tables on their little business, it was known as the bazaars of the sons of Annas. So it's Annas and his sons that are the ones profiting, making gains off of what's happening in the temple. There's two main things that they were doing here that Jesus is really frustrated with. Number one was the sale of animals. People needed to buy sacrificial animals, especially the Passover lamb. So as they were coming into the city, and many traveling long distances, they'll buy their sacrificial animals here as they come into the city so that they can take them in to be sacrificed by the priests or the high priests and through the process. What they're doing is they're jacking up the prices on these sacrificial animals and charging people ridiculous amounts of money. The second thing that is absolutely necessary is the exchanging of currency. You have people traveling to Jerusalem from all over, and so they need to exchange their money for the proper currency so that they can give their temple taxes, so that they can pay what they're supposed to pay. Well, these bazaars were charging a ridiculous amount of money for them to exchange their money into the right currency. Both of these things, the exchanging of currency and the purchasing of animals, was absolutely necessary for their worship. So, they are purposefully charging high prices and gouging people, knowing that they have to pay it in order to properly worship God. Cheating people, all under the banner of worship. And Jesus is disgusted by it. Listen, the way that we worship matters, church. We should take a lesson from this. And as we head into our Easter week and as we celebrate daily, and no matter what time of year it is, as we're worshiping God, we need to worship God His way. Jesus took the worship of His Father very, very seriously. I find it amazing how on Monday, Jesus rides into town and they proclaim Him as the one. This is the Messiah. But now, on Tuesday, Jesus comes into the temple and He rebukes their worship, and looking at the fig tree, He rebukes them as a nation. This moves us towards an entire multitude shouting for His crucifixion in just 3 short days.